Yeah, it's such a small issue. It's like, why do we even care about trans people, right?
Well, I think you know why, right? Because it's very easy to sling hate at marginalized people, and particularly if you can get people to
Marginalized.
feel very emotional about a
What's a
complete
marginalized person?
a community that is already misunderstood, derided, hated,
You're
and
describing me.
I don't think I am. I don't think I am. Not by society, not by society at
Okay,
large.
sorry, I was being facetious. Go ahead. You said a marginalized person is
But if
someone.
you came out though, Doug, no.
A marginalized person is someone who's been derided and what?
For example, someone who is statistic. So I mean, you're going to want a more precise criteria here.
No,
So
I'll be
someone
easy
who's
on you.
statistically more at risk of violent crime against them. Someone who there might be laws discriminating against them in various ways. Someone who might be discriminated against in terms of like job applications or mortgage applications or something like that. So we can kind of operationalize it that way.
Oh, so that would include some white people who don't get jobs because they're white.
Potentially, yeah.
Oh, so white people can be marginalized. Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, anyone could be in principle marginalized against. Yes.
Okay.
Like you could people could be marginalized for any random reason that you could describe about them.
I agree. Kind of takes away the value of the word, though, right?
No, I don't think so, because we're talking about describing who is actually marginalized against, not who. Like in principle, it's like saying I don't know, if John across the road robbed you, and then we said, yeah, but in principle anyone could rob you, right? Like you wouldn't go. So that takes away the value of you.
So can we look at someone's skin color and determine if they're marginalized or not, or do we need more information?
Well, that is some information that will that has some predictive accuracy. So we should sort of update based on that information. But I think the question that you're asking is how much of an update is that? Or
yeah, like if you see someone on the street just based on their skin color, can you tell if they're marginalized or not?
I think that in terms of what you should believe, what are you asking me when you ask me, can we tell? Are you saying can I never get it wrong?
No, I'm asking, would that be a good assumption or a good thing to say, a good reasonable thing to say? I see a black person on the street, they're marginalized. Is that fair? Or
I reckon it should probably tilt you, if you know nothing else about them other than their skin color, it should probably tilt you 60% towards marginalized.
Okay. So when people look at my son, they should 60% say
if they know nothing else about him, they should initially think that, yeah. When they find out that, the dad lives in a gated community in Arizona, then they should probably become, way less, down to like 30%.
Okay. And when you see a white person on the street, it's not 60% marginalized, it's what?
I mean, the problem is, just to say in terms of what we're imagining here, right? Like we're imagining that a scenario where we have no other information,
right,
which is very unrealistic. If you imagine that you're in Detroit or something and you see a white person, maybe you're going to think this person is probably actually quite poor. And so the point is that the contextual information is going to play a role. Similarly, if you're in like a gated community, or if you're in like the richest part of New York or something and you see a black person, then probably that update from them being black isn't going to do a whole lot, right? Because there's other information.
So we shouldn't base whether someone's marginalized or not just simply based on skin color.
Not simply based on that, though. That, like I said, if we're making
guesses, it can help, but we probably shouldn't rely on it.
It's some information, and it depends at what scale we're talking about as well. So, for example, if we're talking at the population level, then that is probably going to be an effect that that's probably going to be a category that we can find effects in that can drive things like, policy nudges that we might want to put in place or things like that. Even if at the individual level, it might be, very bad information, at the population level, it might be very good information.
Policy like DEI?
Yeah, policy like DEI.
So when we're looking if we really care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we shouldn't just base it on skin color. We should get to know the context, right?
It depends. I think in the context of like population level policy, that DEI policy can encourage like social mobility in a way that a policy of purely individual based, whatever that's supposed to mean, policy wouldn't. And I think that part of that is going to be because individual based policy actually becomes a reflection of the norms of power that are already in place, which would be white faculty having a bias towards white students or people with names like them and things like that, rather than evaluating merit.
Like, would my son qualify for DEI?
I don't think so, because I think it's often. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know a lot about how it's done in the US, but I can only talk in the UK context. But on your typical kind of like demographic survey in the UK, you have this is where intersectionality is important. You have a number of metrics that at the population level are highly predictive of bad outcomes.
My son has it the worst because not only is he black, but he's not even considered black because of his daddy.
one of the criteria that they would take into account in the UK, for example, would be the educational level of your parents, and also like the job role of your parents. Like, do they have like a clerical role, or do they have, you know, like a managerial role, or do they like run businesses themselves? And you piece together more of an informative picture based off of, you know, more and more of these sorts of details.
So it sounds like class. It sounds that more like economic class status would be better than skin color then.
Basically, but skin color is being used as a proxy for that. But yeah, I mean, if you want to say it's all really just class warfare, and that the bourgeois need to rise up against the capitalist class, if those are your words, Doug, I won't stop.
Well, no, you admitted it. You said economic class is better than skin color, right? You said that, right?
Yeah, I did say that.
Yeah. So maybe we should stick to DEI, but just forget about skin color and go to economic class.
Well, the thing is, how do you find out about economic class, right?
Ask them.
Well, what's if I say, what's your economic class?
Most people have a good general idea. They say lower class, middle class, upper middle class, upper class.
So there's what, 4 categories?
Or we can even ask for income tax returns.
Well, this is sort of what I'm saying.
This is what they do with universities with getting loans.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying about why you ask about things like postcode, parental income, stuff like that. I agree. Like, more information is better for driving these sorts of things.
So we should say, we should look at someone, like if you and I were running a DEI department, we should say, you know what, we really don't care what your skin color is. We need more information. We need to know about your parents, their education, where you were raised, that sort of thing. Who cares if you're black? Who cares if you're Hispanic? Who cares if you're gay?
No, not that. So we say, we care if you're gay, we care if you're black, and we care about what your parents earned, and we care about the neighborhood you grew up in, and we care about the access you had.
Why should we care about their skin color if they come from an affluent society?
Because skin color does play a role in certain facts, in terms of ways that people may have been judged, or like their names being discriminated against on applications.
Yeah, but they can handle it. They were raised affluent. You know, if someone calls my son the N-word, he laughs it off.
Yeah, but we're talking about that's great for your son, but
because he comes from an affluent class. So we need to ask about class.
I know, but we're making decisions at the population level here, and also because in this case we'd be gathering.
That's racist. We don't make decisions on the population level. That'd be racist. We make decisions on an individual basis.
No,
when it comes to DEI,
policies have to be at a population level. You can't have like an institutional policy.
Well, no, the policy is we implement DEI, but when the actual implementation happens, we go on a case by case basis, because we can't just say, oh, you're black, you must be marginalized. No, you and I both agree. No, we need more. We need to know. Well, maybe we were raised in Bel Air. I don't know.
Yeah. So what I think I've come up with though is a way to effectively operationalize useful information about that individual basis. And I think that what you're encouraging is like vibes-based analysis, which is like not as good as having...
No, not vibes. We could actually ask for tax returns, what your parents make, what schools did you go to.
That's what I'm asking for.
Yeah, we're agreed, yeah.
Whether or not someone's gay. Right?
Yes, so we're agreed. We don't actually focus on skin color. We need more.
We also focus on skin color.
Why?
So do you think that the class... So for example...
Why? Because
it makes a difference.
No, because if someone can be black and not marginalized, and we want to help marginalized people, then we need to figure out what type of black are they? Are they a marginalized black or a non-marginalized black?
Yeah, I agree, and the information can help us do that, but it's still relevant to have that piece of information because it's also possible for someone to meet certain criteria and be marginalized black, right? And in order to have a picture of that, we need to build up the statistical picture with actual empirical
data. But who cares if they're marginalized black and they're wealthy?
I care, and you're asking me about my policies. So
no, I mean like for that individual. So let's say my son
was marginalized black and wealthy.
Yeah, and you talk to my son, and
I'd like your son to have better outcomes rather than worse outcomes.
Yeah, but you say to my son, oh, by the way, you're black in society, so you're marginalized in some extent, and my son goes, I don't care.
Yeah, and I'd say, well, you're PineCreek son, so of course you'd say that.
Yeah, but if he's not being hurt psychologically by being marginalized, if he grows up to be upper middle class and he's just fine and he's still considered marginalized, who cares if he's marginalized at that point?
Well, it depends on what the policy actually says in particular, right? But you know, I can conceive of cases where this really would matter. So, you know, for example, if we were thinking about like stop and search by the police, like being pulled over or something like that, I think it would be pretty important because, you know, the police officer who...
The police love my son. Did I tell you the story? He got pulled over the other night at 12 midnight. I told him, don't drive after midnight because nothing good happens after midnight. He got pulled over. He was wearing makeup because he just came from the theater, like not girly makeup, but just makeup. You know, he's a real man. Yeah. And so, so imagine this. He went through a yellow light, gets pulled over because it was like close, and rolls down the window. And here my son's looking kind of weird because he has this makeup on and he's black. And he ended up, he and the officer had a great talk, and he invited the officer to come to his next show. My son was trained properly on how to deal in those situations. My son is charismatic. He knows how to talk. He's respectful. All these things. He's not marginalized. I dare the cops to pull him over. I mean, they'll end up loving him.
I mean, have you looked at like the statistics of
Oh,
how many black people get
that's
shot
not
by
because they're
police?
black. It's because they weren't raised well.
How have you figured that out from the data? That's not what the data say.
Well, you actually agree with that when I say things like you can't just judge someone as being marginalized by their skin color, because you don't know things like how they're raised, how they've been educated, how they know how to react in certain situations, right? You have to take a case by case basis.